What is up? Welcome back. 2023-2024 NBA season previews. Right now, we'll be looking at the Phoenix Suns. Kind of a new look Phoenix Suns team to some extent. But first off, Jiarmani, man, what's going on?
Man, I am doing good, enjoying the Sunday, but yeah, got to talk about Phoenix today. Very, very interesting moves that they made. It seems like they're going for it, and excited to start talking about this Phoenix Suns team and how far they can really go. But yeah, all things considered, doing very well.
That's good. That's good. I mean, the Phoenix Suns were an interesting case study last season. I know some in the media have said Matt Ishbia, their new owner, it's the new owner syndrome with kind of the transactions and stuff that they made. They traded for Kevin Durant at the deadline. He was kind of Phoenix was his preferred destination when he requested a trade last offseason. Around this time, he got there at the trade deadline. He only played like 8 games or so in the regular season with them. Didn't have much time to build chemistry with Chris Paul and Devin Booker and DeAndre Ayton. But they still advanced to the Western Conference semis. They get bounced by Denver, I believe, in 6, right?
Yeah, I believe so.
Then in the offseason, they trade for Bradley Beal for kind of pennies on the dollar from Washington, who, if you go check out our Wizards preview, we kind of talked about it was just time in Washington, and I don't think that's a secret to anybody. I think it was more than well known for the last couple of years that it was just time for both sides to move on. They trade for Bradley Beal. They also trade Chris Paul in that transaction. And then Chris Paul eventually gets flipped to Golden State, but they trade Chris Paul. And then later in the offseason in the Damian Lillard trade that sent him from Portland to Milwaukee, they traded DeAndre Ayton for a couple of players. But let me just read you a few of the players that they got this offseason, just like new guys. Because they got almost a dozen new players in that build. Yuta Watanabe they signed, who was very good in Brooklyn, who developed chemistry with Kevin Durant. They signed him for the minimum. That's a good deal for them. They got Eric Gordon. They signed Drew Eubanks as their backup center. I can't remember if was Eubanks signed or I think he was signed
that sounds about right.
I think he signed. Anyways, they got Eubanks. They signed Keita Bates-Diop, who's kind of like this 3-and-D wing that spent most of his time in San Antonio, or most of, if not all of his time in San Antonio. But that's a good addition for them. Chimezie Metu. Kind of like a hybrid 4/5. I think he's a high energy, high motor guy. Jordan Goodwin they got in the Bradley Beal trade from Washington. Nasir Little, who they acquired in the Lillard trade from Portland. Same with Yusuf Nurkic, who that was kind of like the center swap that it was Ayton for Nurkic and Nasir Little. And they also got hyper athletic, defensive minded guard who's entering his, I believe, 3rd season, Keon Johnson, who they also got in the Damian Lillard trade. But so they have a collection of new bodies. I know last year was like their biggest problem down the stretch was their lack of depth.
You forgot the greatest player in that entire offseason.
Well, I didn't mention Beal because we already talked about it.
I'm talking about Grayson Allen.
Oh, Grayson Allen was another one. Grayson Allen, I completely missed that. That's my bad. I thought you remember Beal. I was like, we just said this.
No. Grayson Allen's miles ahead better than Beal in any sort of trade. I'm kidding.
Oh, yeah.
Satire.
Okay. That's a good point. I forgot about that one. Good catch. See, this is why you can just say I'm dumb in the comments. It's all right. I'm not going to take offense to it.
Grayson Allen is better than Bradley Beal. Fuck you, mean? No, but I do like a lot of the moves that they made. Yeah, and not even to mention the postseason that Booker and Kevin Durant had, but Devin Booker he led all players. In 11 games, he averaged 30. He averaged 33.7 points per game, and I'm like, my God, and just imagine
after down a couple of games to end that Nugget series.
Yeah, just imagine if they even went even further, how more ridiculous that stat line would have been. And I think him and AD averaged 30 apiece for the postseason. But bringing in somebody like Bradley Beal, it was real interesting how they're going to go about point guard situation or just distributing, because seeing in the preseason Like obviously those guys are trying to do like 2-man action and stuff like that to like get those guys involved. But then also you're gonna see isolations. Um, uh, so like I mean like you got Kevin Durant, probably one of the best isolation scorers the league's ever seen. Like the dude's the greatest offensive weapon. In like when you think of somebody's going to average you 30 points a game, you think of Kevin Durant. Like,
Yeah.
and the thing is, he seems like he's gotten better with age. Like when his stint in Brooklyn, those 3 seasons, he was averaging 29 a game, and and even when he got traded to Phoenix, it dipped down to 26. But I don't see like those guys' numbers dipping crazy. I think all those guys have the potential to be probably like one of the highest scoring trios. Like you're probably looking at another 20 point per game trio between the 3 of them. But yeah, it seems like they're gonna have Devin Booker take a lot of like the point guard responsibilities with Beal. So that's gonna be an interesting dynamic to have. But yeah, like the other guys, like that was like the real question that people were asking, like what was the depth gonna look like after the like acquiring Beal? And honestly, I think Phoenix was probably like the best, probably like the smartest decision for both sides given the circumstances. But also, you didn't see like teams like Boston or some of these other teams that were going to be willing to give up like a significant young piece to get Bradley Beal. Like honestly, if the Celtics would have traded for Bradley Beal, I would that we would have been shooting ourselves in the foot. And I think Bradley Beal is a great player.
Jalen Brown for Bradley Beal, call it in. Even though he's on a supermax and can't be traded, call it in.
But my thing is that going to Phoenix, a Phoenix team that's looking to go for it, and they kind of had a disgruntled star, just like a fractured relationship. One of the stars in DeAndre Ayton getting sent out to Portland, which I think he's gonna be poised to really come into his own a little bit. I don't think they lost a ton with Ayton, even though I do think he's a good player and he brought a lot to that Phoenix team with that dynamic with Chris Paul. But yeah, getting rid of Ayton and Paul and bringing in Kevin Durant and Bradley Beal and a bunch of the other guys from trades and whatnot. I feel like it may be some growing pains since it's a lot of new faces and it's like one training camp I think is not going to really solidify like team chemistry and all that stuff. So it may be a little bit shaky out the gate, but I think over this, they may be that team that gets better as the season goes on.
I think that's ultimately the case. I mean, when you have 3 shot creators like Beal, like Booker, like Durant, the common saying is there's only one ball to go around. But I think at least in terms of Beal and Booker's case, they've gotten a lot better as playmakers over the last 3-4 years. I mean, Durant has too, but I think those guys have taken bigger steps as a playmaker. And so I think they're willing to kind of shelf that load a little bit. And I don't know if it'll be that big of an issue, at least not one that's made out to be. But it still is a little bit of an issue. I mean, going just to the Ayton thing, I don't know. Like it felt weird how willing they were willing to move off of Ayton even after. I mean, we didn't even mention Monty Williams got fired. Frank Vogel's now their head coach. And at least, I mean, it's probably just more coach speak than anything, but it felt like, or at least you depending on how you read it, it felt like Vogel was in on having Ayton there. But it just maybe it was something to do with like Ayton and the rest of his teammates. Who the heck knows? But it felt like there was a little bit of a relationship fracture there. But then like when you trade him in the Damian Lillard trade, I don't really like what they got back for him in terms of like, I'm not with Nurkic. I think I don't mind him as a player, but he's never really healthy. Or at least he hasn't been healthy in recent years. He's suffered multiple lower body injuries. It's felt like
that nasty ankle injury he got, I think in that Brooklyn game of like a couple years ago.
Yeah, like it's just he's worse defensively than Ayton. He isn't as polished offensively. At least like I think Nurkic is a better playmaker that they can use him as kind of like a short roll hub and stuff like that. And it's like a guy who can play make out of the mid post and high post, but that's not something I'd primarily use him as. But like defensively, he's just not as good, especially when Ayton was locked in like a couple playoff runs ago in that, especially in like the finals with Milwaukee. Like he's playing some of the best defense, probably the best defense that he's ever played in his career. I felt like he was really excelling at that. I know he's taken a little bit of a step back over these last couple of years, but just in general, I think Ayton's a better defender I think he's a better rebounder. I think he's a better shot maker. At least he's from multiple levels. He may not. I think he's a little bit more physical. I know there's physicality issues with both he and Nurkic, but it mostly just goes back to the availability thing. And like that's my biggest concern with just this team in general is that like Durant's played 137 games over the last 3 years. Beal's played 150 games over the last 3 years. Booker's been much more durable, but Nurkic has played like 145 games over the last 3 years. Like they have guys who have a recent injury history, and not to say like just because they have a recent injury history doesn't mean it's going to continue for. But like Kevin Durant's like in his mid-30s. Like Bradley Beal's just hitting. I think he's either 30 or 31.
Yeah.
Not to say 30 or 31 is like a death age, but like these guys have a lot of, or at least in Durant's case, and
clock's ticking.
Nurkic's case because of how big it like they have wear and tear on their bodies, and like the type of injuries these guys have had, and not to say like they're not bad players. It's just like if they can be healthy in April and May, that would go a long way for them. And I can't say I'm 100% convinced they will be. I hate the discourse being just injuries by itself because like this is an incredibly talented team that's going to be very difficult to guard. And so the fact that you have these injury somewhat questions around them sucks because you want this team to be competitive. Bradley Beal is a much better player than he gets credit for, at least in terms of like as a shot creator, as a guy who's a multi-level scorer, a guy who can get to the rim. Like he's a guy who can put pressure on defenses, and you can apply that rim pressure and make things a little bit difficult for guys on the back line. Like he's an incredibly talented player. I don't think he gets enough credit for that because of how everything went in Washington. Devin Booker is just coming into his own as like, it's probably fair to call him a superstar right now, or at least damn near close to it in terms of what he's able to do on the offensive end. He was phenomenal in that playoff run. Arguably the best player in the playoffs up to that point, outside of like Jimmy Butler was in that conversation. I'll be biased, but I also think it's somewhat objective how good he was over those first number of games before he got hurt against New York. But like Devin Booker was one of the best players in the playoffs, barring none, like without question. Durant, when he's on the court, as you mentioned, is one of the best players, one of the best offensive players in the league still. Even at this stage of his career, like how incredibly hard it is to defend him on any given night. Aaron Gordon did a hell of a job in that Denver series, but Kevin Durant still got his own at certain points. Like that, like he's there. Those three by themselves is going to be a really tough guard on any given night. But it's just the fact that like can all three of those guys stay healthy? If all three of those guys can stay healthy along with Nurkic, and then get supplementary production from Keita Bates-Diop, from Yuta Watanabe, from Grayson Allen, from all those guys. I didn't forget Grayson Allen this time. But like that would go a long way from. It's like I like their depth. I like this team. But if we're taking injuries into account here, which we kind of have to, even though again I don't like that discourse necessarily, there's question marks. And it's like, can this team, no doubt this team is talented enough to make it to the Western Conference Finals, even in NBA Finals, and even potentially win the NBA Finals. The team is incredibly talented, and they have a lot of complementary pieces around them. But can they figure it out on the defensive end? Can they stay healthy?
Yeah.
Can they at least have enough shot creation to go around? Like Durant last year was a guy, at least he wasn't able to build chemistry with these guys, or at least not enough chemistry, like in-game chemistry. But it felt like there were times where he was just sitting in the corner. It's like, could we move him around a little bit? Can we put him into the best positions to succeed? Can everyone do that and everyone kind of play their own role to make this a successful bunch, especially on the defensive end of the floor, but just in general, if everyone can stay healthy. I just have questions about that. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I would say, just to piggyback off the injury point, is that how are the other guys going to be able to pick up the slack when certain guys are in the lineup?
Exactly.
Because you're gonna look at let's look at like the 2012 2013 Lakers, if that's the right season, when they had Nash and Howard and Gasol and Kobe, and so they had the core four. And like guys were going down with injury, and then they didn't have any really good supplementary pieces to compensate for the lack of having that kind of production. I'm not saying this team is a direct comparison in no stretch of the word. It's a different league, different play style. Like the league is drastically different from even 10 years ago. But with the with like you only can just assume it's natural that Kevin Durant may not be a guy who plays 65 plus games every season anymore. He has torn Achilles, he has wrist injuries, ankle injuries, and whatnot. And then Bradley Beal, he's starting to get hit with the injury bug.
He's also COVID too, but like
not
still,
like not even a.
He's been hit with COVID like 4 or 5 times. It's like a lot of times, but he's also dealt with injuries. To your point,
yeah. But like what you're going to get from these guys when they step out on the floor, especially Booker and Kevin Durant. I feel like Bradley Beal may be the one guy whose stats dip just because of the circumstances of having 25 plus per game scorers on your team as well. But with that being said, it's like, what are you going to get out from guys like Grayson Allen, from Bol and Nazir Little, and a lot of these other guys, a lot of these role players that will really make or break this team? Because again, what you're going to get around like a combined nearly like 75 points maybe a night from those guys. Like the scoring and everything, that's where it's coming from. But when those guys are out of the lineup, or 2 or maybe all 3 of them are out of the lineup for a given night, if that's just drastic circumstances, what are those guys going to provide in terms of that depth that they've tried so hard to build up after trading most of it away to get Kevin Durant and Bradley Beal to pair up with Devin Booker? Now, if they manage to navigate those kinds of waters well, I could see this team making some noise in the playoffs. Do I think they get past a team like Denver? That remains to be seen, because we saw obviously a full year of Kevin Durant and stuff like that. That can't be ignored, but you also can't ignore what Denver did to that Phoenix Suns team this past year. So it'll be interesting to see. I can't have a concrete. I can't be 100% on either or, but I feel like this team, if they can, it's just about navigating those kinds of waters and how much availability you're going to get from your main stars. That's going to dictate the whole season, because if those guys go down, how's the rest of the team going to be able to sort itself out with those guys out of the lineup? So I feel like if they can work with that, I feel like they can be a team to watch in terms of playing deep into May and June.
And we talked about this year a little. We talked about Grayson Allen, or at least you did. I forgot to mention him at the beginning. But 2 guys who I want to mention who were already there were, or at least one, like Josh Okogie. He might be their other starting guard back there. They might run out of starting lineup, kind of like what they did last year with Ayton in the lineup, but they might go Booker, Beal, Okogie, Durant, Nurkic. Okogie is going to be tasked with heavy responsibility defensively, and I guess that's my other biggest question that I kind of hinted at was it's going to be interesting to see how they match up defensively. Booker was really good last year defensively in the playoffs, and I think he's grown as a defender over time, and I want to see that consistently from him. But I think we have seen kind of flashes of it. But last year in the playoffs, we saw it consistently on the defensive end while averaging 35, 36 a game with 7 assists or whatever it was over that 8 to 10 game stretch. I can't remember exactly how many games it was, but he was sensational on both ends of the floor, at least in my opinion. Durant's a good defender. I don't think he gets enough credit for he was really good his those last couple of years in Brooklyn when he was healthy. I thought he deserves more credit for that. I don't think that gets talked about enough. Beal, we've seen flashes of it. I guess that's my biggest question for him is are we going to see it consistently at the point of attack when you're in space against other 3s, other 4s, potentially if you're switched out or if you're switched on him? What are we going to see as an off-ball defender? But Josh Okogie is going to be a guy who is tasked with a lot of responsibility on the defensive end because he's their best probably perimeter defender right now. Him and Jordan Goodwin, which I don't know what Jordan Goodwin's going to do. I don't know what his role is going to be with this team. He might be in the rotation. He might not be, but he is another guy who I would just watch out for in terms of like this guy, at least as like a point of attack guy, one of their guard spots. He's a guy to just watch out for flashes throughout the season. Like Nasir Little's a solid defender. He's athletic. He has the instincts. Keita Bates-Diop is someone who's been like a solid defender over time. And then you kind of just go down the line with that. But like defensively, like what's the structure going to be like? Because I mean, I trust Frank Vogel as a defensive head coach. He's proven time and time that he's just a solid defensive mind, and he'll get the most out of his guys defensively. Kind of like what we saw in the bubble with that 2020 Lakers team that won the finals. Like this is a really like he's a good defensive minded head coach, and so I wonder how he kind of works around that. Especially with the worst defensive center, I felt like he's always had like solid defensive centers. Like as a coach in his career, like he had Roy Hibbert, he developed him.
You got like 30-something-year-old Dwight Howard, and you had Anthony Davis.
Anthony Davis, was the big one. But like, I think he's had, at least his most successful teams have had fairly solid defensive centers, and I've been on here over time and time again, and how important the centers schematically as like the backbone of the defense. And with Nurkic and Eubanks, I have a little bit of a question mark. Also, on a funny, not unrelated side note, but Portland's starting front court last year with Nurkic and Eubanks is also now Phoenix's starting front court. Or not starting front court, but like Portland's front court last year is now Phoenix's front court this year, which is kind of funny. But I just wonder how they kind of work around those margins a little bit, because it's like on some nights their offense will be their best defense. And I don't think that can be ignored. But like once the game starts slowing down, you guys, you have these like very good shot creators with an Eric Gordon who can space the floor, with the Keita Bates-Diop, with the Grayson Allen who can knock down shots. Like you have guys who are complementary pieces that you can fit around these guys. But what's it going to look like on the defensive end when it comes down to guard?
Yeah, I would say kind of like as a final thought for me is that I feel like this Phoenix Suns team, if it's going to have some bumps in the road, it's going to culminate with them being that team that can smoke bad teams, but always finds a way to lose to good teams. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So like I feel like how is this team going to perform when it goes up against like other great offenses like Boston, like Denver, and like the Lakers, when seeing how they shape up. So like that's
good defensively as well.
Yeah. So that's gonna be the real interesting thing to see. But so I think like a floor for them is those guys, because they finished like 4th in the West. They may find themselves like I would say a top 5 seed, even a top 3 seed if everything goes well. But yeah, I think they could be like one of those teams that like have like a round or below 500 record against like key games, so like good teams, contending teams. So like that would be something that would probably be a team stat I'll keep an eye out for.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like again, a team like Denver scares the hell out of me, kind of with this team, because it's like, who's going to check Joker? Who's going to check Jamal Murray? Probably Kobe.
Yeah, but then who's going to check the 6'10" wing they got, who just loves shooting threes?
Yeah, like Michael Porter Jr. Like and Denver again. Check out our Denver preview. Jerry and I talked about it. Like Denver was good defensively last year. At least I think they were better than what people like the perspective people had of Denver's defense like 2 or 3 years ago was non-existent last year, especially in that playoff run. Like they were good defensively. That was a team that could get like key important stops at certain points. And not to say Phoenix can't do that. They absolutely can if they focus on team defense. But that again, with this new team, I want to see it for 25, 30 games before I can make any like conclusions, like any sort of conclusion. But there are question marks there, like that there are questions that need to be answered at some point. And maybe they go out and like again with the new, I'm pretty sure I haven't looked at their tax bill, but I'm pretty sure they're over the second apron. Just based on the guys they got.
Well, you would
think
they
have one of the biggest caps in the league, but
yeah,
maybe they go out and see if they can try and maybe they find a trade for another wing, or like a guy who like guy's a defensive minded guy, or a guy who can play both sides, like a two-way guy. Like maybe they go out and find something like that like a smaller piece, of course, because it's like I don't think they have any picks because they traded all of those away.
Probably not. So like this is the
Um,
team. That's why I said they got to go for it because like
Yeah,
your future. It's kind of like the same thing with the Clippers. You made that home run swing of a move, so now you got to compete for like the next couple of years and potentially be winning championship because this team is probably gonna like as soon as like these guys start hitting that age. Devin Booker probably in like 4 years when he's 30 years old may not be on a Phoenix Suns team. What
maybe.
probably within that 4-year window. So it all depends, but yeah, like their future is going to be a mess. And we thought like the post Steve Nash Suns those years were rough. Like I feel for that for like them and the Clippers.
Actually, I want to. They might have a bunch of second round picks now that I'm thinking.
Probably,
I can't remember.
Unless they just
which again, you could trade 5 for Jay Crowder.
Yeah.
Not to say Phoenix will bring back Jay Crowder, but just based on the market last trade deadline, which was the funniest thing possible.
Yeah, that and the buyout market and stuff like that too.
Crazy. Well, since they're over the second apron, they can't use the buyout.
Actually, yeah, that's right. The damn CBA.
Yeah, damn CBA.
But
do you have any like final thoughts?
Besides that, I'm anticipating the trio of Kevin Durant, Bradley Beal, and Devin Booker to probably be like up there one of like the highest scoring trios that the NBA has ever seen. That's like the highest. That's like the ceiling for these guys, like as a collective unit. But it may be some growing pains, so I wouldn't be surprised if people overreact if they lose, like go on a rough 10-game stretch to start out the season, because like people just love to overreact and the media loves to blow things out of proportion when like early on in any sports, any start to a sports season.
Yeah. I mean, we've seen it before with the Nets. We've seen it before just in general, how like it, just because you have like depth and fit matters a lot in this league, especially come April and May and June. Like that stuff matters a lot. So if you're missing either one of those, and you, at least if you're healthy, it can be an issue, because it's like Chris Paul got injured in the Nuggets series last year.
Yeah,
we're running Cam Payne out as point guard. No disrespect to Cam Payne, but he's obviously not the level of point guard that Chris Paul is. And so they're both. I mean, not really their defense, but their offense definitely took a hit. And so like they were lacking those. They were lacking those shot makers and shot creators, and now they have at least a much better one in Bradley Beal. Let's see how well that transpires when the half-court offense bogs down and everything. It's mucked up.
Yeah,
they have talent. They have at least more depth, I think, than they did last year, at least in certain positions. Like I think they have more wing depth. You can maybe argue they have more guard depth than they did. I don't like their front court that much. I think they took a hit there. I think Lawndale and Ayton are much better than Nurkic and Eubanks, but again, that remains to be seen. We'll see how that plays out. But I think they are deeper at certain spots that will help them over an 82-game season. But let's just see what happens. I'm excited to watch this team. I'm very interested. Again, I want to see it for like 25, 30 games. That's it.
Oh yeah, this team's probably going to be fun to watch regardless. But yeah, like even like, just going back to my previous point, it's like when Kevin Durant played his first game as a Warrior, they lost to the Spurs, and I remember people were like just talking out their asses, and they go on to win 2 of like the next 3 championships. So,
the big three, Miami's big 3 at the first game they played in Boston, they lost.
Yeah, so it's like. So like I'm not gonna overreact to even though like a lot of people can get baited with like a lot of like the roster changes. It's so much roster turnover for this team. Yeah. So like I feel like I wouldn't find it surprising at all. But this team will be some fun to watch, and they may potentially have 3 all-stars on their team.
Who knows?
It was crazy. Booker was an all-star last year, but I guess remains to be seen. So Phoenix is gonna be a fun team to watch this year.
That means we're definitely going to overreact 5 minutes into the season. We're going to make all of our final just outcomes. We're going to spew them out in the space for all of it to be heard. Thank y'all for watching. like and subscribe. Say I'm dumb. Please don't aggregate what I just recently said. Don't do that. I don't actually mean that. Thank y'all for watching. Check out vendettasportsmedia.com. All of our other NBA season previews. We have them up on the site. We have them up on the YouTube page. Please go check those out whenever you can. And continue saying we're dumb, or at least I'm dumb, or I'm smart. I don't know. I would like to consider myself dumb, but nah, not everyone.
Not in a basketball sense.
Nah, sometimes I am.
Yeah, come on.
Listen, I forgot Grayson Allen, man. Like, I'm dumb.
Yeah, and you forgot Bol too, but I'm not gonna. Who's keeping score? Not me.
Yeah. Well, like, Udoka Azubuike just completely missed his name on a two-way.
That's a name right there, Azubuike.
No. But anyways, thank y'all for watching. See y'all next time.